Okay, welcome to the show, Hailey Kleinhans with Capital Floats Auburn.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm super stoked. Thank you for gifting me my first float.
Oh, absolutely.
That was after we did your like launch video. And okay, first of all, floating is super dope.
Yes.
And I had no idea. All I knew about it was listening to Joe Rogan podcast and listening to them talk about this experience where you get in some sort of tank that's filled with super salty water and you float. And of course, you know, Joe Rogan's talking about like psychedelics and the history of all that built into it. And I'm just going like, whoa, like these rich people do crazy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, they do. And also floating is more accessible
nowadays,
which is really cool.
Right. But even just like the concept of like you go float normally. And obviously when you go float for the first time, you know, it's like, okay, don't do crazy stuff in our float tanks. Like, right. Either way, floating was this like abstract concept to me that I never in a million years thought I would have the opportunity to do. And I had no idea. I was thinking of like a round big tank, like a round tank, like a round ball, and you floated in it like a fetus or something. Like the way they were talking about it was so out there.
Yeah.
And so then anyway, come to see what a float center is really like. I was like, wow, this is really approachable.
Yep.
Anybody can do it, and it's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when you reached out to me when you were doing your meetups and you were like, oh my God, floating, you're going to open a float center in Auburn? That's crazy.
Just enthralled like a little kid. Yeah.
And yeah, you know, it's accessible for anyone. And I think going back to Joe Rogan, like Joe Rogan is, we call him like the god of floating because he's the reason that the industry exists because of how much he talked about it and how he still talks about it all the time. I don't think Joe realizes how many people he affects by what he says, which is really cool. He's such a humble guy, you know, and he just shares honestly from his experience, which I think is what's compelling about anyone sharing something powerful, you know? And so, yeah, Joe, I joke around like we should pay Joe a little bit, like give him a little cut because he was actually involved in the Float Lab, which is one of actually the first commercial tanks that were built by this guy named Crash in LA.
You gotta have a cool name to invent a float tank.
I know. They look like these big like meat lockers. And they have they're very industrial, and he was the first to build like a commercial grade float tank. And Joe reached out to him and was like, hey, I want to get in that thing. Yeah. And he did. And then Joe kind of, I think, and Crash worked together to make a float center accessible to the general public in LA. This was in, I think, the early 90s.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. I had my history off by like a decade.
Yeah. Or maybe it was the early 2000s.
Oh, I don't know. Don't trust me.
I think it's the early 90s.
Don't ask me. I literally am not the one to know.
I'm not very good at dates either. Either way, that the Float Lab, and I'm really excited to go there at some point to be able to visit because that center is still operational and they're
that's cool.
butt, and they're like really big into biotech. So they're like going into the genetic modification like stuff. Have you guys heard about this? Where like you can get injected with like
stem cell stuff?
No, it's not stem cells. It's like modifying DNA to like have like
Dude, that's hardcore.
Pretty gnarly. But like they're into that. They're like they're very cutting edge in that respect. So anyway,
Okay,
Joe.
so before we get down too far of a tangent, there's some people who don't know what floating is at all.
Yeah.
I'll let you explain it because I started with talking about it from my like what my things like conceptions were, but really I think I should just let you tell like everybody what floating is and what a float center is.
Cool.
Yeah.
So floating, kind of to go to what you were saying about not really knowing what it was and having a concept about what a float tank could be. That's really common. People come in or hear about floating and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. That sounds like sensory deprivation. It sounds scary. It sounds like claustrophobic.
Yeah. Are you half deading me? Are you half killing me? Like why sensory deprivation?
Yeah, totally. People think about like, that's a whole nother tangent. But anyways, floating in what it is now and what we offer in Auburn, it's a large tank, so it's 8 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 8 feet tall. So
it's rectangular, by the way.
Yeah, it's a rectangular room.
Yeah.
And you actually step into it. So you open the door and you step over a threshold and you're standing in 10 inches of water. And that water, it just feels like water, which is really interesting, but there's actually 1,100 pounds of dissolved Epsom salt in that water. And so when you sit down and you lay back, your limbs just like pop on the surface and you float effortlessly.
Yeah.
Which is basically what it is. The benefits, I think, are far-ranging. So Epsom salt, it's like, I think of it as like one of the cure-alls of many things.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually magnesium sulfate. And so what magnesium sulfate or magnesium in and of itself is responsible for all of your neurological and gut connections that are happening in the body. And so when we're deprived or depleted in our magnesium stores, the body just doesn't function at its optimal level. You experience like a wide range of things from fatigue to insomnia to, even depression sometimes with low mineral stores. And so what happens in the tank is that you're floating in this heavily salinated solution, and your pores open. So the water is heated to 93.5 degrees to 94 degrees. It's meant to just match your outer skin temperature. It's not supposed to make you hot or cold. And so in that environment, your pores open, and the body can absorb that magnesium. If you've taken an oral magnesium supplement or taken magnesium like as a topical, with things like that, you have to take them frequently and you have to reapply topicals. And if you take too much magnesium, it can really upset your stomach. So what's neat about the float tank is that the body is intelligent, obviously, so it absorbs what it needs and then it stops absorption. So you can't overabsorb your magnesium in the float tank. You can't overdo it in that environment, which is really cool because you get out feeling hyper-hydrated, hyper-relaxed.
It feels like a paradox, but it's like you just like you're so relaxed.
You're just so blissed out. You just literally have not a thought in the world. And so that's like the more physiological benefits of what's happening. Epsom salt is also, it's wonderful for relaxing muscles and relieving the float tank, relieving pressure off of joints and bones. People that have chronic pain like fibromyalgia, even and arthritis and things like that, they find a lot of benefit from floating because it's removing pressure from the body in a really profound and unique way. And the sensation is really unlike anything you've ever experienced until you've done it.
Right.
We have gravity to contend with. When you sleep on your bed, you have, no bed is perfect in that, you roll around and you might have pain points or whatever. And then also, injury, like recovery from injury and things like that. When we have an injury, we tend to compensate on one side or on the other or hold our bodies differently than we would if we didn't have an injury that we're working with. And so the float tank, it kind of allows the body to come more into symmetry during that session, which is really healing for, circulation and things like that, getting nutrients and blood flow to areas that maybe wouldn't necessarily receive that in any other environment.
Yeah, I think of it's like a neutral zone. Like when you get in the tank and you start floating, it gives you like this neutral, almost like a non-combative environment to get in touch with your body.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So like normally, like you said, you're contending with gravity. Like gravity at a lot of times, it feels like the enemy. Because you're like, I have to stand on that leg and it hurts.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. Or that side of my back, it aches.
Yeah.
And when you're in this like neutral zone, it's like gravity's kind of like not bothering you anymore. I've heard you say it, like it's hard to explain like 30 times, but it's true. Like your skull floats.
Yeah.
And I remember going in there my first time and being like, after a while, after I got relaxed, I felt all the little tension points in my body. Like, oh, my lower back on the right and then my shoulder blade, like my left shoulder blade are tight. And I didn't notice that before. Like I was just going about life. But just laying there and having no other, like you said, no other sensory input, you kind of get in touch with your body and then you're like, oh, okay. And then not to mention you can like stretch. Well,
Yeah.
because you're only in 10 inches of water.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
move around and
Yeah.
stretch and have, a little more mobility and range of motion in your body in ways that you wouldn't otherwise be able to. But kind of to your point, that physical awareness, the mind connecting to the body in that way, we get really busy and we get really distracted, and we have a lot going on just in the world that we live in. And so oftentimes we can get disconnected from the body. And so the float tank, it just provides a safe environment to reconnect to the physical body. And I think that that's one of the most profound ways to achieve greater, transformation in your life. Like if you can really connect to your body and how you feel, and like you're saying, those tension points, being able to not only connect to that tension, but also learning to release it, like focusing your attention and your mental attention on releasing those areas that are tight or that are bothering you. You can.
I want to explore that because
yeah.
that sounds like I've never done that before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, and that would be the place to explore that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the body is like a little universe. It really is. And so it's cool that there's like a
little
whole
universe.
It is. It's like there's a whole world that's there to explore that
Make a good
maybe
t-shirt.
otherwise
I'm a little universe.
little universe. Or a big universe. I mean, depending on your point of view, I guess.
Yeah.
But when you are able to access those connections, then it's like you get to discover and explore more about who you are and what makes you you. Every person walking around has they're like living in their own little world, with their perceptions and their filters and their ideas about what's real and what isn't. And so when you connect physically to your body, I think it allows for a deeper investigation into other things too. So I feel like floating has a couple of tiers. It's the physical, it's the emotional, it's the it's the mental, and it's the spiritual. So it's very profound in being able to weave all of those together, and create or offer an experience that you can really go in whatever direction you choose.
Right.
You can choose to focus on the physical and just use it for that, and just want to be in there to recover physically, and whatever your ailments
I mean,
are.
I love it for just an hour of nothing.
No sound, and
Yeah.
you can have music and lights and stuff like that. But oh my God, like how often in your life do you ever just not have?
It's like when you
distractions?
sleep sometimes.
Sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
But even then, there's like a sprinkler or
if you have
cars
kids.
or you have kids, and like,
Yeah.
there's always opportunity for distraction. And so the float tank is like designed to eliminate.
It's you and yourself.
It's just you and you.
Oh, it feels so good.
It's so safe.
nice.
It's so safe.
Yeah,
And,
it is.
that's, I think too, like, when you start to create safety in that environment where you're like, okay, like I'm really safe just being with myself. That translates into the world too. You start to discover like the more that I've floated, the more comfortable I've become with who I am as a person. Like being with myself, like it isn't so scary anymore to like just be by myself and like listen to my thoughts and do my thing.
Are you naturally more like extroverted or introverted, do you think?
Both, I think.
You're like pretty in the middle.
I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
I think I love being in a crowd of people, and I love like a party, and I love.
But you also appreciate the alone time.
I really like alone time.
Okay, yeah.
And as I get older, I crave more and more alone time, and I think the more that I float and the more that I meditate, like floating, I feel like it's just a puzzle piece in a much broader like journey and a much broader exploration of being a human being. So we need a lot of tools, right, to just exist in this world. And I feel like the more that I float, the more it opens new doors to new areas to explore and to implement greater practices of self-care.
Yeah. And I think what you mentioned as a safe space, it's you and yourself. It's a really great opportunity to meditate. That's because like if you have trouble meditating, go float. That's my personal 2 cents, because there's no distractions.
Yeah.
Because it's like you could Google it. I guarantee you right now, if you Google it's hard to meditate. what you're going to get back is all sorts of stuff about, when you first start meditating, it's hard. Try to limit distractions, try to be in a place, because you're just starting out, so you can't just block it. It's like, the ultimate form of that is floating. Mm-hmm. You're literally in like a double room. So you have your own private room that has a shower and then the float room or the tank. Mm-hmm. So you're behind 2 doors. Mm-hmm. Like you're really isolated.
Yeah.
It's very private.
Very private. And to your point about meditation being hard, meditation is always hard. I feel like one of my...
Like even if,
Right.
Even if you're a Tibetan monk, like one of the monk that I really admire and author that I really admire, Pema Chodron, she's been a practicing monk for like 50 years. And she's still like, meditation is so hard. Mm-hmm. Like I hate myself I hate my thoughts sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like why can't I just stop thinking? And it's not an easy thing to do at all by any means. And even in the float tank there are moments like when I floated over like, I don't know, 1,000 hours in the float tank. I still struggle like the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it takes that long to
my
wind
brain,
down.
like, why can't you just stop thinking? But
can you book more than an hour at a time? I noticed okay. Cause like, I noticed I wouldn't probably do it myself. Okay, let me word it this way. I would if I didn't notice the water temperature being slightly different at the end of the hour.
Do you feel like it's colder at the end of the hour?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
not cold though. Let's be clear. Like it's still up there, but it's not like I might be a degree different.
Okay.
But you can feel it when you're very like intimate with it and aware of it.
So one of the things with the tanks is that they're working hard to match your body temperature. Mm-hmm. So when you're nervous or you have anxiety or you come in with a full brain, your body is usually a little bit warmer. And so the tank may warm up to kind of meet you where you're at. And then as you relax, your body temperature will actually cool down. And you're probably only noticing maybe a half a degree, if that.
Oh, yeah, like I said, it's subtle.
It's very subtle.
Right.
But you can float for longer periods. We do a 2.5 hour float, which is really cool.
Ooh.
Yeah, and you'll be, the water temperature, if you actually, one of the things I like to do is you can kind of feel that there's heating blankets that wrap around the bottom of the...
so it's like actively...
Oh, yeah, it's actively heating. So if you're in there and you're like, I'm getting a little chilly, you can actually... The heat you can actually feel the heat coming off the walls, which is a really cool feeling.
So that probably doesn't kick in until like maybe like an hour and a half or so.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, it could have even been mental, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
It's also like some people say like, oh, I feel like I could have been warmer in there. And then I'll ask like, well, did you get cold? And they're like, well, no, I just kind of felt like I could have been warmer. And it's like, well, that's kind of the intention of it, is that the temperature, it's almost like you notice it after, where you're out. And like it was a little bit cooler in there. Or when the light comes on, you're like, oh, it's a little bit cooler than I thought it was when I first got in. And it's meant to like match you as opposed to like raise or lower your temperature.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and there's also a possibility, because the air, by the way, the air temperature is it's almost identical to the water.
Yeah.
Like if not identical, it's very, very, very close to where when you dip your hand in the water, if you go slow enough, it would be a little bit difficult to tell where the line is, right?
These are really great tanks. These tanks are like, they are top of the line. That's hard to achieve. And not all float tanks are created equally. So, and not to say that there's a bad float tank out there, but they are not all created equally. And
right. Like,
so it's like, that's why I went with these tanks, because of that specifically.
Oh, yeah.
The temperature control,
to be honest,
is so good.
I probably wouldn't be sold on floating if I had gone and done an hour session like I did, and by the end been actually like cold or something. Mm-hmm. I'd be like, no, like, because I can't focus, because the whole point of the temperature regulation is to facilitate your focus, because it'll be distracting.
Yeah.
Like, what's the worst thing about taking a bath? When it gets cold.
Yeah.
Then you're like, oh,
this sucks.
This sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
You mentioned what your favorite thing to do is do sauna first, then massage, and you offer both in the float center, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we offer all three. I like to infrared. So infrared light it heats with heats with infrared light, and it penetrates like 2.5 inches beneath the skin.
Ooh.
So it's a very deep heat, and it takes a little longer to start sweating. But after you start sweating, you really sweat, and it draws out heavy metals. It's very detoxifying, and also helps with circulation and relieving pain, which is another really cool thing about infrared light.
It's going to be popular in the winter.
Oh, yeah. It feels so good. The sauna feels so good.
Yeah, there's like no sun in the winter.
Yeah. And the infrared light has a very healing, like, I don't know. It's a healing experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like to infrared for half an hour. If I have time, 45 minutes is really nice, because after like the 25-minute mark, I really start to sweat. And then if I can get to 45 minutes, it's just like I'm like drenched and I feel awesome.
So then you go rinse off and then go get a massage.
Yeah. So then we have a shower room right next door to the sauna room, so you can shower. And then you put on your robe and get a massage. I do 90 minutes. I think 60 minutes is just a tease. You should do 90, because then you can really get in there.
I could see you making like a whole a whole morning out of it.
Yeah. My birthday is a week from today. And on the day before my birthday, I'm really excited.
You're like, I'm going to treat yourself.
I'm like, sauna, massage, float. Yay. Like, it's going to be like 4.5 hours of my day. But like after that, you're just like, I mean,
nothing can
have
bother
a meal
you.
And you're going to feel so good, and the food's going to taste so good, and you're just going to want to like lay around and, enjoy your state of being, which is really cool. So yeah, massage and then a float after that. And I like that order because in a massage, a sauna before is going to loosen everything up. And then the massage is going to move like lymph fluid and, kind of move things around physically. And then the float tank, like massage therapists will tell you, a good one will say, yeah, you should probably take an Epsom salt bath tonight after you had this massage. So you're getting into like 1,100 pounds of Epsom salt, the most intense Epsom salt bath
Were you
you've
saying
ever
it's
been
like
in.
Something like 2 or 3 times as buoyant as the Dead Sea or something like that?
It's not that much more buoyant.
Oh, okay.
It's like one, I think maybe half. It's the Dead Sea is, you sink a little bit. I don't know exactly what the ratio is,
right.
but it
but
is
it's
more
saltier.
buoyant than the Dead Sea.
Right.
Yeah, saltier than the Dead Sea for sure. And I've never been, but I've heard there's bugs in the Dead Sea, so there's no bugs in the tank, which is really nice too.
The float tanks are immaculate, by the way.
Yeah, they're very clean. Very, yeah.
So, okay, it took you like a year to build this place, and there was a float center in Sac before your float center. What was that like? So from like from an entrepreneurship perspective, because that's kind of what the show is about. But we had to do float talk because it's dope.
Yeah, that's cool.
So what was that like? I mean, that was a hell of a year building that place.
Well, I decided I wanted to open a float center 3.5 years ago. So, and then that was when I was working in SAC. I was the director of operations down there, so I was basically running the float center in Sacramento, and was like, this is awesome. Like, I want to bring this to Auburn. I grew up here. So, and then I had a year trying to find a building. So I actually... that where Missions Coffee is.
Yeah.
There was a spot, a building, like a redwood building, like kind of right behind it, looked like a house. That I was like, one of the many spots that I looked at, it actually burned down. Like when we're starting to think about like maybe we'll buy this building and it'd be super great to like own this building. It literally burned down. So it's just like a crazy.
There's nothing like your hopes and dreams going up in flames.
Totally. And I'm like, well, thank goodness I didn't open there. That wasn't the right spot. And then found the spot that I'm in now, and then that was 9 months negotiating the lease that I wanted, because I knew that construction on a float center just takes a long time. It's so technical. There's so many pieces that have to be perfect to get it right. It just takes a long time.
Did you have to get like engineers involved to like deal with like the plumbing and stuff, or how did that pan out?
Yeah, so I had an electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer, an architect, no structural engineering, thankfully. But yeah, so getting those plans right was, a few months, at least. And then you go through permitting through the city. And thankfully, City of Auburn is incredible. They are amazing. I can't say enough about
it easy
how
on
awesome
you,
they are. Generally made it pretty easy on me. And then, I rented an empty suite, a 1,400 plus, little over 1,400 square foot suite that was just a big, wide, empty corridor. So we had to do underground plumbing. We had to connect to the sewer main. We had to basically build out that whole infrastructure of showers. And what's really, really like the thing about a float center is like every little thing matters. Like you have to be so diligent about every piece of the plan. Because if you don't dig, like if you dig your plumbing in the wrong place and then you back pour your concrete and it's not the perfect angle, then once you get to the very, very end and you're putting on the flooring, the water is not going to drain. It's going to sit in the room and it's going to create mold. Right. And then you're going to be like, it's too late to change it. The tanks are already in. Like, there's nothing I can do. So
yeah, you guys had to build the walls of each room around the tanks, right?
No. So the tanks come in pieces.
Oh, okay.
So the tanks were like the last piece that came in.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so the plumbing, I mean, construction is the most boring subject there is. Let's be real, in my opinion. But I know more about construction than I ever wanted to because you have to learn. I'm like, yeah, I want to open a float center. It'll be so cool, and like I'll get to float all the time and like make a difference in the world and like help people. It's what that really means is you got to learn like how to negotiate. How to like get contractors' butts in gear and like, call them at 7:00 in the morning, like every single day. Where are you? Why aren't you here right now? Be hounding the city. Although me hounding the city is like, hi, can you help me? I need help. We ran into a couple things towards the end of the project where I was concerned we weren't going to pass final inspection because of a miscommunication that had happened with the city. And that's just like literally 9 months of constant stress and learning a skill that I had never had to develop before. So there was this point during the process where I was on the phone with my originally my boss and now my business partner, being like, I literally can't remember anything. I feel like I'm told something that needs to happen and I just forget it 2 seconds later. And he's like, yeah, you're evolving, so your brain is having to learn so many new things so fast that like it can't catch up. You're like, my brain, it just felt like information in, it just like fell out the other side. And so, I learned how to be highly organized, and just like say what needs to be said. Don't beat around the bush. Just like get it out there.
Yeah.
Like this is what has to happen. If you can't do it, let me know now so I can find somebody else.
Yeah, because not only will it not be effective, but you just don't have the energy for anything else.
Totally. And then what's, just to cherry on top is COVID, So I was going to open April 1st, first week of April. And we had a call, my business partners and I, and one of my partners said, I don't think we should move forward and open. I think it's a good idea. And I'm like a perpetual optimist, which is a great quality and also, can be challenging at times. I'm like, we can still open. COVID, like this is a stressful time. People need to relax. Like this is the perfect time. He's like, no. You're going to get closed down. Everyone's going to get closed down. And sure enough, like 2 weeks later, this was like end of March, we had this conversation. And then, a week later, it was just like, it's done. Everyone's closed. And so, which in retrospect was a beautiful blessing because I was so stressed out and I had put so much pressure on myself to get it done. Timelines in a construction project that have an end date are every day
cost so much money.
Oh my God. Every day and every hour matters so much. So if, and meanwhile, I'm also working, almost full time at Trader Joe's, at a grocery store, trying to like manage construction and like be a cashier. They're like, hey, are you going to do your job or like what's going on? I'm like, you don't understand. Like, trying to explain it. I'm just crying. Like, I'm sorry.
They could get their pirate's booty when they get their pirate's booty. Okay. It'll be fine.
Oh my God.
They can get their puffs. Okay.
Well, one of the things I also like personally just struggle with and have, I think, really struggled with then was humility, and also like learning that whatever anyone is doing is the most important thing that they're doing. So for like anyone that I interact with, they all have great big dreams and great big things that they're working on, or maybe it's not a big dream, but whatever it is, it matters 100% the most to them.
Right.
And so for me, like my float center matters 100% the most to me, but it's not fair for me to like expect everyone to get that. So like
you're not actually the center of the universe.
No.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of going to your question about entrepreneurship is like, I think being an entrepreneur is really about getting past your own bullshit.
Oh, every day.
Because you have to learn so many things. So many things. But like literally, you know, you go, you think like this is this like romantic idea of being an entrepreneur, and it's like in all reality,
it's nasty.
It can be nasty, but and also beautiful in that nasty, if that makes sense.
It's like the hardest damn thing you can do.
It is, because
I mean, maybe not literally, but
one of the hardest things, and I think that, you know, if you really want it, you're gonna have to die. Like your ego is gonna have to die. And like a lot of things about who you are gonna just have to say bye bye. Like I had operated from this place of like being a know-it-all. Like that's been like kind of my like thing. Like I don't need help.
Yeah.
I got this.
Yeah.
I got all this. I can run circles around everyone and work 15 times as hard as everybody else.
Superhero syndrome.
Totally. But I don't need any help. It's like, you want to get something done? Sorry, girl. You're going to need help. You're going to have to ask all your friends, all your family. You're going to have to ask people for money that you're like super uncomfortable, but you're like, hey, I need
You're going to have to ask for money. You're going to have to pay money.
All of it. Yeah. All of it. And so you're going to need help. You're going to need to ask for help and get comfortable, not only asking for help, but comfortable not having the answer to everything.
So how have your people skills improved?
Tremendously.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I don't know that. Can you teach me?
Right.
I don't know how to do that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Can you teach me how to do it?
Yeah, flattened you out. Like nice, flat.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in that it's beautiful, because now like I feel like entrepreneurship maybe is the thirst for learning, the thirst for growth, the thirst for...
Well, it's like seeing what's on the other side of your imagination.
Yeah, and in that pursuit...
In real life.
Totally. And in that pursuit, like, learning from other people is the greatest asset. So relationships, like building relationships and learning about... You know, I learned about electrical engineering. I didn't want to, but me and my electrical engineer, we're buds.
Yeah.
Like, if I need something, I can call him and say, hey, can you help me with this thing? And he's like, sure, let me, figure out my schedule. And I know what a Cat 6, I know what these things are now. And that was only because I like humbled myself enough to ask the question and not pretend like I knew it. And then,
or that you're above it or beside it.
Right.
Well, I did pretend at the beginning of the construction process, and it cost me money. It cost me money. It cost me other people's money because I made mistakes. And it's like mistakes were how I learned. And I made so many mistakes that I just started to get to this place where I'm like, I don't know anything. I know my name. I know how to dress myself.
You're like questioning, that's so funny. It's like not an identity crisis, but something like it.
Yeah, a little bit.
Where you're like, I am, but nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so like worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're just, it's like you're on the table and you're just getting like kneaded, but with that, like not being in that place of like, I don't know a lot of what I thought I did. It means that you're so open and raw to receive information. And then once you like are able to do that, then it was like, oh my God, like I got all this information. And it was like, okay, like now I know, like I'm open to coaching. So I need help in these 25,000 different areas. And I found the people to help coach me because, opening a business is really about the team. It's about how many people you can recruit
and assemble
into helping you with your dream. And there are so many people that help me, get to where I'm at now.
It's interesting, kind of like how severe the circumstance has to be in order for us to have that level of growth where you, like you said, you kind of like die all these deaths and then you like, it's like the Christian thing, right? It's like the baptism thing. It's like you die and then you rise, and then, it's like, the circumstances like have to be so severe sometimes with us to get us to flatten out and to become open and receptive. And yeah, I was actually thinking about this today when in regards to like how deep our opinions are, but it's like more than our opinions. It's like our whole worldview, like how deep that really is in our psyche. And what revealed it to me was actually like listening back to previous episodes of the show. And I'm listening to the recording that I'm on, so, and then as I'm listening to the guest talk, my mind thinks the same thoughts that I was thinking during the recording session. Meaning, like if I'm listening to the guest talk on the recording, the same thoughts trigger, and in my head I'm thinking what I actually say on the recording. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, whoa, like I'm wired a certain way. Mm-hmm. So like that wiring like runs deep. And it's like sometimes it's like, well, what is it? Like how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
Yeah.
It's like a year's worth of starting a business or whatever. Something really damn hard.
Really hard. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that as human beings, so much of what you just said, like, I think is really cool. Because I feel like we all are like that.
We're
right?
all lollipops.
We all are lollipops. I'm a Tootsie Pop. We we all kind of, we're born, we get conditioned, we come into this world maybe without any of that. And then as we grow, as very young children, we start to develop this worldview and we start to develop this filter around what is real and what's going to keep us safe. So, and then every interaction that you have, you operate from how am I going to be safe? How am I going to be liked?
Yeah, you're looking for like reliable things in the world.
Yeah. How am I going to not get hurt? How am I going to get love?
Yeah.
Those things. And then with all of that, it deprives us of the real miracle of being present with somebody. So it's like if we're just sitting there like with all of our like don't hurt me, I'm scared, or whatever it is, then you don't actually get to hear the person that's speaking to you in front of you because they just sound like maybe your mom that didn't tell you what you wanted to hear when you were 5 or whatever. Totally, like all of that. And so, I think that, and also human beings, I think we crave that like fire. We crave getting burned. We like not burned, but we crave like the death and the growth. Like we want that. And I think it's
like the progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the progress cycle.
I mean, comfort is like this thing that we all settle for. But then when we get out of our comfort zone, we really learn what it's like to be alive. And that's where we find our meaning. It's like, okay, well, this sucks, but I'm doing it and I'm doing it well, maybe, I don't know, or maybe I'm getting through it. I'm surviving. It's where we learn what our limits are, what our actual capabilities are. And if we stay like in our comfort zone where it's comfortable and we never take those risks of, jumping out on a limb to start a business, we'd never actually get to know ourselves.
Yeah.
Some people do it differently. Some people like commit to like running a marathon and they've never even ran a mile before or something. Like stuff like that is kind of similar, right? Because the amount of work you'd have to put in to do that would be substantial. But I was, when as you were talking, I was thinking, it seems like everybody in their life should do something incredibly hard at least one time, like a full commit thing. Like whether it's like, okay, start a business, not maybe to get rich or anything like that, but just try it, do it, like do it for yourself. It's so hard, freaking bubbly Safeway, sparkling water's like making me burp. Like do it for yourself. And it's not, that sounds weird. Like that sounds like weird, mushy, like new age, do it for yourself. And like, no, really, like, if you want progress in your life, if you feel stale, stagnant, and just like old and crusty for like no apparent reason, maybe you're young and successful in your job and whatever, you have all the check marks, but you still feel whatever, it's like you got to go bigger.
I think also...
Maybe not. Maybe that's just like, I don't know if... I think that I find that to be true. like, I don't think like snuggling down on your couch and being like, I'm going to watch Netflix is going to solve that for you.
Well, I mean, to what Charlie said, you don't really know yourself till you get outside of yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that when you do that, it can be a tiny thing.
Mm-hmm.
I dance in public all the time. I don't give a shit. You don't like it? I'm going to still do it because it makes me feel good and I'm comfortable in my body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I express myself sometimes.
Right.
You know, it's things like, and I think that when you make those little commitments to honor who you are as a human being, whatever your skill set is.
Yeah, that is a little thing, but it's like, even for me, that seems treacherous.
Totally.
Yeah.
And for most people, like, why would, and I'm not a good dancer at all.
Like, oh my God, people are going to look at me.
Yeah.
Be
Well,
like, they're
going to look at you anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're scared of you because you're being who you are and they're scared to be who they are.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Because it's like we are so human beings are so complicated and yet so simple, you know, but who we are is all those things that we were talking about earlier, you know, that filter, like all that stuff that makes up who we are. Like that's, you want to call it ego, you want to call it conditioning, whatever you want to call it, like that's a big part of who we are. And if we can embrace that and
strip away the bullshit,
own it though.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I got a lot of bullshit. I have a lot of ideas about myself that I hold on to that I know come forward in every situation. And it's like, I'm like, oh yeah, that's not helpful right now. Thank you. Like, I don't need that right now. That's not gonna get me to be present with the person that I'm with right now. Like, that's not relevant.
Right. You're writing the script to your new clothing line, by the way. You keep saying things. I'm like, I'd make a good T-shirt. It's like, own it. Another
Okay,
T-shirt. Dance in
Do
public.
it. Well, I mean, I do. I think that I'm comfortable with who I am.
By the way, you should share what your slogan is.
My personal slogan?
No, for your company.
Oh, recognize your potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, recognize your potential. Yeah, I think that you know, when you decide that that's what you're going to do in your life, you're going to recognize your potential. You're going to like really just investigate that. What does that mean? It means whatever you want it to mean. You can make it mean whatever you want.
Yeah, you're definitely the only person that's going to know.
And that's all that really matters, right? And that like, if you recognize your own personal potential, then what happens as a natural result is that you help others recognize theirs. Mm-hmm. Because by being who you are authentically, you give other people permission to do the same.
It's inspiring.
Yeah. It's like, if I'm going to dance in public, then maybe that means that someone else that sees me do that, maybe in a year, they're like, I want to dance in public. I don't know. That's not why I'm doing it.
Right,
but that could be an effect
right.
of doing something as, silly as that.
Right. There's this thought process that's, what's wrong with the world? And what's wrong with the world is that the individuals are not living up to their potential, right? If each of us lived up to our potential, how much better would the world be? And it's like, oh yeah, but what do I matter? It's like, you matter a lot. You're connected to all the people in your circle, and all those people are connected to people, and the littlest kind of movement in that network is going to have effects. And especially if you've got, if you're working to be your best self, and it inspires one person to do a little bit better, maybe they'll inspire somebody else to do a little bit better, and it creates like this positive feedback loop to make a better world. Yeah,
totally.
You have more impact than more gravity, more reach. People love watching, meaning everybody's looking. Like, don't be mistaken, everybody's watching. But that doesn't mean they're reaching out to you. It doesn't mean they're telling you that you're inspiring them. But do you really actually need that validation? Because that's not the reason you should be doing it.
Right.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us get caught in that. We get caught in the performative.
Well, it becomes measurable at some point.
And it also feeds into that conditioning as a child.
Yeah.
It's like, I need acceptance. I need love. So I'm going to do these things that I know are going to land well with people, and they're going to like me. And then I'm not going to get abandoned or whatever it is.
Right.
That's a pretty common one, like the people pleasing.
Oh yeah, I have that for sure.
Well, it's interesting because sometimes it's buried in a strength, right? So like, people who, okay, so like take one person who's like an incredible caretaker, or like they're an incredibly hospitable person, or like they're an incredibly like they have huge servitude, right? That's the better version of themselves, right? And that particular person's weakness is that when they're not at their best, they're concerned with people pleasing, just by default, right? And so we all have that. It's like a coin thing.
Yeah.
We all have like the one half, the strong half, and like the weak half of ourselves. And it's like, I mean, I don't know where I'm really going with this, but yeah, you know, we all have that. And it's like digging down and finding where your good half is, and then living that out as much as possible. There's a lot of happiness in that.
Totally intentional, right? In the intentionality with which you do things. Like, am I serving people because I need to feel purposeful? And if I don't serve people, or if I don't give my all, then people aren't going to like me? Or am I serving people because it makes me happy and it brings me joy?
Oh, and it's like the right thing to do.
And it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, I think intention is everything. Your why, like people, you hear that a lot. What's your why? It's like, well, that's important to know. If you don't know your why, then everything that you do is potentially could be, you know, foundless, or have that kind of like negative affect that you're talking about.
It's not always easy, also, by the way, to know what your why is.
No, it's not. It changes.
It might change, and sometimes you just might know it not. Like if you're, when I started out like in business, I'm like, okay, you know, like I'm going to do websites, and it's like it was such a like singular, finite idea, and then over time, like over the past few years, it's like, well, now look at where we are, and what we're doing for and it's like, well, how did you go from that to that? And it's like, well, I figured out the why.
Yeah, we started with a what, and then we were like, well, why are we doing this? Why, you know? And part of it was like, well, it was the right step at that time. But then it's like, where are you going? And it's like, okay, well, then you need to actually figure out why you're doing it, because otherwise, where are you going? You know? Yeah.
So I guess so where I was going with it is, if you don't know even how to approach finding your why, just choose to do something as a what.
Yeah. Because the why will come out.
It'll come out.
The why will ask to be like discovered.
Yeah, especially after like enough like treading water.
Yep.
Like jump in the pool.
Yep.
Tread water for a little while, and then when you get tired, you're gonna ask why, and then you'll get some answers. Yeah.
And then at a certain point, I feel like the why saves you. It saves you, because during construction, I'm just like, I had months where I didn't sleep. I wake up in the middle of the night in like night terrors and night sweats, like just so like never been so stressed out ever. And it's like, okay, I want to die a little bit, like, you know, and what's my why again? Like, oh yeah, that's, you know, I want to make a difference in the world. I want to help people. I really do. I really believe that. I think that floating is a tool to do that. And there's a lot of tools in the world available. And this is one that I've found that's really helped me.
And it's neat. And it's fun. It's
fun. It's neat. Yeah. And, you know, also like there's something so powerful and beautiful about seeing someone uncover a little bit more about who they are. Transformation is such a drug, you know, and it comes in kind of going to what you're saying about, you know, our conditioning and all of that stuff. It's like, if you can transform that, then you are so powerful. Like if you can transform what you've been conditioned to believe, or whatever those decisions and choices and agreements that you made with yourself, however long ago it was, if you can get to the bottom of that and transform it, holy crap, you have so much power.
Yeah, because you're like a permanently malleable.
Well, you're no longer a slave to it.
Right.
You're no longer a slave to that identity. You're no longer a slave to that dialogue. And then it's like, well, what's available outside of that? Wow. Like I don't have to play that anymore. I don't have to play being small. I don't have to play the do you like me game. You know, sometimes I do, but personally, so totally, you know, certain situations and certain relationships and just certain things bring out those little pieces, and it's like, ooh, that's fun. You get to kind of, it becomes more of like, oh, I'm a little insecure right now. Like that's fun. Like what can I do with that?
Yeah, to me that sounds like a maturity thing, kind of like the self-awareness. like the ability to tap into self-awareness at will, rather than going and screwing up and then having to like mull on that for like a day or two and then be like,
or a year, 10
or what?
years,
Oh God, I couldn't
so many
imagine.
things,
I couldn't do it. But yeah, just like and then finally realizing after the fact, like, oh, that was a little bit short-sighted or immature of me or insecure, whatever. If you can like tap into that in the moment, like, okay, this is uncomfortable. Uncomfortable can be fun.
Yeah. Okay. Ow.
I mean, that's like oddly optimistic or weird, but it's kind of like, I agree. There's definitely circumstance. It's like, maybe, what are you making a sales call? Maybe you're asking for investment money. Maybe you're like, this is uncomfortable. It's like, yep.
Yeah.
That's the show right there.
That's the show. And, you know, this is something that I work on and I struggle with. I have a very blessed with a really supportive and amazing friend group. And when I'm just very close with my friends. And when you're that close with people, and I value honesty in my friendships, my friends will call me out on my bullshit, which I love and appreciate. But, you know, I had a little thing happen with a dear friend of mine, and she was like, you didn't call it out when it was happening. You like waited a week to assert that you were uncomfortable or to assert your needs. And that's not really fair to me because I don't know what's going on.
I'm operating in the dark.
Right. Yeah. And so, but it is experiences like that show you how to do it in real time.
And then it shows you how much it matters.
Yeah, it does. Cause it's,
like, damn it, I hurt somebody and somebody I care about.
Totally. And I feel like, you know, in the moment, you know, when you're doing something and it's like it's not nice to somebody else and you're hurting them. And maybe you don't know why, or you feel really righteous about it. And you're like, I'm going to be a da-da-da because this is how I feel right now. And I'm operating out of feeling entirely. I'm going to be like a 10-year-old child that's throwing a tantrum or a 5-year-old or whatever. This is what I'm doing.
Complacency.
Yeah. But when you have a lifetime, and that being our baseline of how we behave as human beings, like that's how we've operated, I think, until you decide to go in and do the inner work and really like learn about all of that stuff that we've been talking about. Then you are able to actually grow up and be an adult and show up powerfully in your relationships. And I
think about it, it's like we have a light inside. Like you could even, I mean, if you want to just be really simple, like a light, maybe even a light bulb. And you really and it's all gunked up. There's a bunch of gunk around it, and you got to clean all that stuff out for it to shine through. That's like the way I think about it. Like I feel like we got something put in us.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think we naturally want to express that. We naturally want to shine, you know, our purest, highest selves. And we get a little bit distracted sometimes.
It's tiresome.
Yeah. And also showing up that way, it requires a lot of like intention and choice. And also all of the stuff that we're talking about, I think in the past year of opening the center, like I was probably the worst version of who I was then.
That's crazy.
Because, I think,
I mean, it's incredible that you know,
relationship wise with my friends, like the things that I had to ask, you know, the way that I learned how to communicate because I communicated poorly with people that really matter to me. Like my family matters to me, number one. Like my parents and my brother are like, those are my peeps. Like those are the most important relationships to me. And I asked a lot of my family during this time, and they showed up powerfully for me and supported me and have, you know, continued to support me. But I learned, like, okay, I have a lot of work to do. And so my point is that when you have a lot of stress in your life and you have a lot of things that are pulling your energy and requiring your attention all the time, and you're working on a project or whatever it is, and you don't have the mental space to do that work. So it's like, how do we learn? And I did over the year of construction, learn to have the stress, have the big thing you're working on that's taking all of your energy and being consuming, and also be committed to being a good human being to yourself and other people. And however we find that, whatever methodology we use, I mean, I've read a lot of personal development books, been through a lot of seminars, and like done a lot of work, and I think it's just so important. But we all find our avenues with which we can utilize tools, even with stress, even with, overwhelming sense of doom that I feel like a lot of us feel right now, especially.
Right.
It is the time to show up powerfully and
Oh, hell yes.
grow up.
Yes.
Mhm.
It is the time to grow up right now.
Okay. I'll admit something right here. That's what I want to tell the world right now, to be honest. But like, I feel like this is when you're going to get your head cut off for it.
It is.
It's like, I kind of want to be like, hey, you should stop being a pussy. I'll bleep that out maybe. But like, you really should, this is when you should be going in 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like in particular.
And you want to change the world? Change yourself.
Yeah.
Stop looking at everybody else and yelling at them and getting mad at what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They don't matter. Like, they matter, but they don't matter to you
Right.
and to your development and what you can do and how you can make a difference.
It's almost like, well, personally, I might reword it. It's like, I think they matter. They don't know they matter.
Yeah.
And they're partaking in a behavior that especially doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, it matters in like, okay, if everybody's being super negative,
Yeah.
it matters. But I guess to me, what matters more is when somebody does something good.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. It's
Yeah.
like they matter. They're an individual.
Mhm.
They're a
Yeah.
human being. I honor them. I respect them, even though I don't agree with them. But me wasting my energy trying to understand them or change their mind doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right.
Waste of my time.
Right.
Waste of my precious energy. And I only have so much to give.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're being negative, I don't want to engage in that. I don't want to
Mhm.
I don't even want to look at it. I'm like, cool. I don't, no thanks.
I believe so much in what you're saying right now, to the point where when it's time to go to bed at night, late, like let's just say in the past 6 months especially, like I'm kind of speaking to like the hustle,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, done.
Yeah.
I laid it all out, and I feel guilty if I don't go to bed feeling that way.
Huh.
Now that might be something I need to work on, if like, that just might be a Cody thing. Like, okay, you don't have to feel guilty if, like,
Right. But,
but I'm just saying it speaks to how much I believe in what
there's
what
a
she's
healthy
saying.
amount of guilt. Right. I
It's
think
not,
there's-
I'm not
Right.
like oppressive.
Right.
I'm not my own tyrant. It's just, I feel better about myself when I have nothing else to give.
And you've given it all to something you believe in.
Yeah.
And something that was worth your energy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like being a father.
Mhm.
I have so much respect for parents. Like, I opened a business, like, cool. Having a child, like, that's like the greatest responsibility there is on this earth.
Right.
And I have no concept of how difficult that is, and it's so like giving your energy to things that really matter to you. Like, that's all we have time for.
Mhm.
You want to waste your time getting into political, like, just all the stuff that's happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, to me, that's the lowest of the low,
It's the
too.
lowest
Mhm.
vibrational level a human being can operate on. And you want to operate at a high vibration, which means that you attract high vibrational beings to you, and you attract beautiful experiences, and you attract, incredible transformation. Like, don't surround yourself with people like that.
Right.
Like, love them and bless them, but goodbye. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, and just getting used to, like, when something less than ideal happens to you, maybe it's in business, right? It's like, like that person stood me up or blew me off, and I want to be really pissed off. But then you're like, wait a minute, do I even have the like energy budgeting?
Yeah.
That's not built into my budget.
No, totally. That's so great. And that's something that I have learned in the past few months of being open and like transitioning from like managing construction to like having staff and
Managing the business.
It's just it's like wearing a different like hat,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Totally. It's like, how much energy do I want to expend on this conversation or this person? Like, oh, I don't want to spend any energy on it. So how can I like
Get
be
out
the
of it.
most concise with my words and not have to continually follow up with this person?
Yeah.
And it's like people that don't make their time commitments and don't show up when they say they're going to, and don't follow through on their word.
Well, it reveals who all is valuing what.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And whenever, if that person, wanted to show up differently at some point in the future, I'd be so open to it. But like right now, And I think that just for us as human beings in this current environment, we got to be choosy.
Yeah.
Got to be choosy about who you're spending your time with and who you're engaging with.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, what I'm finding lately is like as the demands grow, like it's crazy. So like it's just like a snowball effect, right? You start with a little hand-packed snowball and you start rolling it, and now you got like a grapefruit, and then it turns into a cantaloupe and a watermelon, and then eventually you're like, hey, come help me push this thing, right? It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and sometimes more exciting too. Like, dude, this thing is huge. Like, look at what we did. But it's like
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I guess to tie it into what we're saying, it's just like, yes, you have to be choosy, because eventually that snowball is going to be so big, you don't have time for people getting in the way.
And if you want to make a big snowball,
it's too much work. Like,
you gotta, if you say yes to someone that's not in alignment with what you're doing, you are saying no to someone that is.
Right.
So you're closing the door on the opportunity to actually foster a relationship with someone that's going to help push and drive your vision forward. We only have so much energy to give.
Okay, so interesting. I feel like I'm going to reveal. Okay, so in between these interview episodes, we're going to start doing like little short bite size, like maybe like 15-minute ones where it's maybe just me or me and Charlie, or maybe just Charlie, who knows. And one I was thinking about is like the concept of openness, right? And you've mentioned it probably a handful of times already, just in us talking today. And it's like, wow, what does the trait of openness really allow you to do? And it's really cool because, and you just said it, openness, gives you the ability to accept new things into your life that are good. And the openness also, an open mindset basically, also allows you to cut off things from you that are holding you down or holding you back. But you can't do that if you're so stubborn, like my way, whatever. I've always done it this way, whatever, that kind of like rigid mindset. You can't release yourself from the chains, you know? And I was like, and I wanted to, so I'm probably going to do that.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. Like a little like lunchtime chat, little bites.
Yeah. It'll be like, I'm thinking 5 to 15 minute
I like it.
episode, like where it's like, I'm just sitting here like going at it.
Yeah.
And that was literally like, I think yesterday I thought of that. And when you just mentioned this, the no, yes to one thing is no to another.
Well, it is. I mean, boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like boundaries are the name of the game, really. And a boundary helps you differentiate between where you end and another person begins, where your interests lie and where they don't, you know, and where your energy begins and where it stops. So it's like,
clarity is just insane.
If I want to have openness, I have to have really good boundaries. And I just like, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. The less design, like one of the concepts of design, like great design is, it's not about what you can add, it's about what you can take away, right? Like perfect, like amazing design is all about like, there's nothing that
the Apple logo has a little bite taken out of it.
Totally.
They just had a little
there you go. But it needs it, right?
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't be with it without it. Like, so it's like, what can you eliminate so that you can be open to receive what it is that you're asking to receive? Because I don't think we really know until we have the boundaries that allow clarity to come in.
Right. Openness is, it's actually dangerous if you don't have.
Totally. Because then you're people pleasing and you're doing that, you know, that dance.
Yeah. Then you're just open to every wind that blows your way. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. This is powerful. That was a solid episode. Everybody, you need to go float at Capital Floats Auburn.
Come float.
No kidding.
It's on Auburn Folsom Road, right there across from Maidu Market.
Yes.
That's a good way to describe it,
yeah,
right?
Yep. 660 Auburn Folsom Road. We're in the same parking lot as Auburn Fit One Gym. And then I created a discount code. So if anyone watching this episode wants to come float, you can use Auburn Biz Ventures in checkout and get $20 off your first float.
Oh, that's a solid deal. You need to do that.
Yep.
Go get $20 off your first float and go float for like an hour at least.
Yes.
And thank you, Hailey. Awesome
you guys.
episode. Thank you
Yeah.
for bringing
Thanks
a
for
float
having
center
me.
to Auburn.
Thank you for having me.
Fist bump.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Bam.
Yeah. Cool.